Welcome to the June meeting of the Wildlife and Parks Commission. We will begin the meeting with introduction of commissioners and staff.
Robert Wilson, Pittsburgh.
Good evening. I'm Deborah Bolton from Garden City.
Doug Sebelius from Norton.
Kelly Johnston from Wichita.
Frank Meyer from Harrington.
Good evening. I'm Shari Wilson from Kansas City.
And I'm Gerald Lauber from Topeka.
Sheila Camus, Commission Secretary.
Dick Kurth, Topeka.
Robin Jennison, Topeka.
Linda Craighead, Topeka.
Chris Tymason, Legal Counsel.
The first item on the agenda this evening is our general public comment section on non-agenda items. If you would like to address the commission and indeed the staff on matters of concern to you that we're not going to discuss tonight anyway, please, now's the time to do so. Please come up to the microphone, tell us your name, your hometown, and your concern. Would anyone like to address the commission at this time? Please come forward.
Yeah, my name is Jerry Ponton Jr. I'm from Manchester. I've got a few things. Number one is the Fur Bear Field Trial application form. When you fill that form out, it requires you to put the legal description of the property you're going to hunt on. Well, this is a fur bear hunt. We hunt the whole county, and it's a little hard to put down the description of the land that we're going to hunt. And we have people from all over come to these things, and it's a little hard to fill out an application to receive the permit to hold these. So if you could do away with that part of the application and just put the county hunted in, there's a statement at the bottom of the form that says this permit doesn't give you the legal right to trespass. You still have to have permission, so that should cover everything else as far as that goes. But it would make it a whole lot easier if you could just put down the county you're going to hunt in instead of the legal description, because I'm not going to hunt just a little quarter. You know, I have 6 dumps. I hunt 6 miles. So it's a little hard. If you would do that, it'd be great for a lot of people.
Well,
Thank you.
I thought you said you had several matters. Was that the only one you want to talk about?
No. It probably pertain to the other stuff.
Very well. Would anyone else like to address the commission this evening on non-agenda items? Very well. Many of you probably do not know that this is going to be the last commission meeting I expect for Commissioner Sebelius and for myself. And I'd like to say a few things before the end of this meeting, and this seems to be a good time to do it for me. I have enjoyed tremendously my 8 years on the commission. I have met a lot of great people, a lot of smart, knowledgeable people, many of whom are in this audience, and have very much appreciated this opportunity. I have several concerns that I'd like to mention for the next commission. There are 3 things that I think are really grave concerns of mine for the future Wildlife and Parks Commission and the department. The first of which is invasive species, and we're going to talk a lot more about that tonight. So I won't say any more about that at the moment, but it certainly covers a broad spectrum of species, flora and fauna, not just Asian carp, which we'll be talking about. The second has to do with revenue, so that this department can continue to function in a proper fashion, not only with respect to our science used by our biologists to advise us, but also with respect to something as basic as law enforcement. We have too few law enforcement officers, and we have had too few for a long time. This department desperately needs a dedicated funding source. contributing to the immediate future is the fact that the baby boomer generation is retiring. They're reaching age 65. They're reaching an age when they won't have to buy licenses anymore. And I think the wisdom of allowing the use and enjoyment of our resources without contribution from our citizens who are 65 and older is a subject that needs to be carefully addressed. There may indeed be segments of our society that deserve that reward, and that'll be a subject for discussion for which I will not be able to participate. But this problem is not going to get better. It's going to continue to worsen. Finally, I'd like to mention the subject of greater prairie chickens. In April, in fact, April 10, Mr. Pierce wrote an article for the Wichita Eagle discussing a study being done by Lance McNew in the Flint Hills that was shocking in what it had to say about the future of the greater prairie chicken in the Flint Hills. Among the things that he said were, quote, "In the past 4 years, I have observed near complete reproductive failure. A prairie chicken has about a 5% chance of making it from being an egg to an adult. Prairie chickens in the Flint Hills produce about 1 chick per every 10 adult females annually. This equates to an annual decline of about 30% in some areas. Annual. That's no way to sustain a population." That's the end of the quote. Now, this commission discussed a couple of years ago an idea to establish a no hunting zone in the eastern border tier of counties that did not go anywhere. But this information in the study has been published more recently than that discussion. I think we owe this species our concern to preserve it. Indeed, it is among our statutory duties to conserve and protect this species and all species. I don't think we're doing that. It's a very difficult problem with many variables involved in the situation such as described by Mr. McNew, but I think it is time again to discuss a no hunting zone for greater prairie chickens in the Flint Hills, or eliminating or curtailing the early prairie chicken season in the Flint Hills. Now, there are places in this state where prairie chickens, greater prairie chickens and lessers are doing really well, and I don't think it's necessary to, I don't think the same concern exists east of or west of 77 Highway. But this species is going to disappear if what Mr. McNew has discovered and continues to work on remains as described. That's what I wanted to say, and thank you for listening. And if there is anyone else who would like to address the commission, this is still our general public comment section.
Mr. Chair?
Bolton?
I would like to thank Commissioner Sebelius and you as our chair for your great leadership these past 4 years of my being on the commission, and I want to tell you that we'll miss you.
Thank you.
I'll miss you all.
I might say a few things, Mr. Chairman. Well, I could do one of two things. One could be I could reprise my performance in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying that I did in this auditorium in 1968, if you would like that. Or I could just say I hope there's somebody who will follow me as the commission smart aleck. I appreciate you putting up with that for 8 years. But really, I'd like to say, as I've said to my family and many people that I know, I'm probably the luckiest person I've ever met. I've been able to do and see things that maybe the average person hasn't. I've been associated with many good people, brilliant people, but mostly people of integrity, people with purpose, dedicated people. And I would say the largest population of those dedicated people that accomplish much and do great things for this planet of ours are employees of the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, the National Park Service that I had the privilege of working for a few years, and I almost chose that as a career path rather than doing what many of my friends said was probably the lowest thing I could do, which was to become a lawyer. One fellow told me one time that when I was thinking about going to KU and getting a degree in journalism instead of law school, that we are up to our eyeballs in lawyers and they don't accomplish much. It could be true, but it leads me to my last thought, and that is if Kevin will hang with me, I've already started an outline of what I'd like to see as a prosecution manual for my colleagues. I've been a prosecutor for 31 years, and probably the greatest insight I have gained is that the regulations and the laws that we passed in this state to protect the environment and the wildlife that God gave us gets the lowest attention, and in some places a complete disregard. I think it was Commissioner Bolton that maybe passed this on, the result of some failed case in southwest Kansas done by two people who I consider good friends. The result of that case, which was a poaching case, apparently was a $100 fine, and they got their equipment back, and they didn't lose any privileges. They paid the court costs. That doesn't happen in this county. And I think that manual would be something that at least raised the consciousness of my colleagues. And I say this because in a couple of meetings ago, I mentioned that I cannot even get my own association to return my phone calls about trying to do this on the level that should be done. I can't even get them to give a CLE. I volunteered to do that. You know, anyway, I'm rattling on, I'm sorry. But I want to remain engaged, and if people in the department will hang with me, I think we can get that done. And it's like Kelly says, you know, what good does it do to have just a handful of officers that are trying to do a huge job over a gigantic area of what we put into place? Where does it go if you don't enforce it? If you don't raise that level of respect out there in the public because somebody cares? You know, anyway, I'd like to see that done. I take them seriously, and it's got one thing left that no other offense in this state can accomplish, and that's a prosecution fee. I don't want the legislature to know that it's there. I've used it. I've paid my county back after billing them for prosecuting a case. And it gives a great deal of incentive for somebody to work with me on a valid and respectable sentence if they've got to pay me to oppose me. So anyway, that needs to be out there. My friends and colleagues need to know that there's some respect that's demanded. If you take that oath and you assume this job, you better do it like any other crime. Thank you.
Any other comments for the general public agenda? Doug?
Doug Phelps from Manhattan. As a private citizen, natural resource and wildlife advocate for a number of years with the commission. I've got to know all of you pretty well, and we haven't always agreed on everything, but I just wanted to leave you with my thanks and let you know that those of you that are departing will have my respect, and you will always have my gratitude for the sacrifices that you and your families have made to do this job. I don't think that the sporting public understands how much this job can take out of an individual, the time constraints. I know the compensation is really great. Unfortunately, it's not monetary. With that, I'll leave you, and I will always remember the contributions that you made to my state.
Thank you, Doug.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner?
I think this may also be my last meeting, so I have a few things I would like to say, because I think we have accomplished a lot in the areas of education, parks, and tourism in the last 8 years, and it's been my privilege to be able to assist in those efforts as part of the commission. I never dreamed that I would have the privilege to serve in this capacity, and it's been just a wonderful, wonderful learning experience for me, experience of getting to know so many of our constituents, and we do have the best constituents of any agency with wildlife and parks. People really care about what happens to our natural resources with our youth and to help promote our state's tourism areas. I think, we are really ready to do some big things now with education and tourism, and we have developed partnerships over the last few years in those areas, especially in public health and with education organizations that I think were new and are growing all the time as we learn that we're all working toward many of the same goals to help our state citizens spend more time outdoors, live healthier lives, and care about the outdoors so that they'll also be committed to be good stewards of our natural resources for the next generation, which is something that I just feel very honored to have been part of this commission, because I think we have really worked as a team toward that end with the staff of Wildlife and Parks. And I would just echo what others have said about the staff. I want to thank all of you. I had a very steep learning curve coming on the commission. I had no idea all the topic areas that this organization, the agency, covers. And you have helped me along the way, every meeting, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your dedication. I know many of you have spent most, if not all, of your careers working in Kansas. I know you could have gone other places, but you're staying here, and we owe you an awful lot for that. I look forward to continuing to be involved in whatever capacity I can with many of these areas, projects related to youth in the outdoors, to promoting our state, increasing opportunities for tourism in our state. And I really think that the time is now and the stakes are high in terms of the health of our kids, and also just getting them devoted to the outdoors the way so many of us are, so they'll be willing to support it in the future when they're the ones sitting up here and the ones sitting out in the audience and making policy and spending decisions for our state. So thank you, and it's been a privilege to work with all of you, and I look forward to continuing that in whatever capacity that is. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I was going to do this under other business, but I think this is a much more appropriate time. On behalf of the department and really the sportsmen and sportswomen across the state of Kansas, I want to thank you and Commissioner Sebelius and Commissioner Wilson for the role that you've played, the leadership, the guidance that you give the department. And also, and I think more importantly from my standpoint, the opportunity that you give the constituents that we all have to participate in this process, because I think that's very important for an agency like ours that touches so many people in an area that's really so dear to so many people's hearts, and that's the natural resources, the state, the opportunity to enjoy those natural resources. And I think it's very important the role this commission plays in doing that. And certainly in my short tenure here, I know, and you brought it up, the invasive species, I think it's important to have a representative group of Kansans to help us as we work through this issue, because it is a very difficult issue. I can only imagine that there have been numerous issues like that over your tenure on the commission. There are going to continue to be numerous issues like that, and the commission is very important to this department, and we appreciate your efforts in that regard, and we wish you well as you continue. And I do have a very small token. Hopefully in the near future we'll have something a little more durable to show you our appreciation for your efforts on the part of Kansas and the natural resources of the state, and we thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you for your leadership. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to address the commission on non-agenda items? Very well. Let's proceed to the department report workshop. Item 8, potential changes in deer regulations 2012, Lloyd Fox.
Thank you, Chairman Johnston. Tonight we are, this item is the same as we had at the Wichita, the last meeting of the commission. Normally we discuss we start discussing deer regulations in October. This year we've had 3 years of sort of stable regulations with the deer process. And we have had public comments that indicated people would like to see us review additional hunting opportunities, and people have come in and advocated for seasons for their children. Legislators have advocated for changes that would result in an expanded antlerless only season. We've also had criticism of some of our programs. So we are reviewing this, and we're reviewing it in a longer process than we normally do. I won't go into the specifics the way that I did at the Topeka or at the Wichita meeting. I'll only go into a few points on this. Again, these are not recommendations. We are going through the process, and we've put some ideas out there based on the inputs and the request from public and legislators and others. We have designed a few points that we consider potentials that would change our season date structure, possibly allow more opportunities, and we were thinking specifically in terms of opportunities for youth, that's 16 and under, young hunters, college-age hunters in different parts of it, and also working-class residents of Kansas. We're looking specifically at how we might change regulations that would revolve around established holidays. For example, instead of having our 9-day season for youth and people with disabilities, we would split that into 2 4-day seasons. One would start the Friday before Labor Day, and one would start the Friday before Columbus Day. We would have 2 weekend days or 4 weekend days in that, and 2 holidays. This is an example of a possibility of something we might consider. Probably the most controversial thing suggestion that we have made was changing the 12-day, the traditional 12-day firearm deer season and starting it before Thanksgiving as opposed to the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. And we understand that these are items that are controversial. We're putting them out there to find out if people want changes and then what is involved with those. One of the changes that we might consider would be to move the whitetail antlerless only season earlier in the year, before Christmas, start before Christmas. Possibly to establish a pre-rut whitetail antlerless weekend in September or October, something earlier in the season. We've thought about expanding the archery season dates and possibly including things from September all the way through to the end of January. Some other states have that. We have that also on one of the regulations we'll discuss later tonight, where that is being done on one of the military bases. And then we looked at a possibility of increasing the number of days when muzzleloaders might be used at a later time. We have looked at, in the past, the possibility of developing a dual tag permit, and we've got a couple of ideas on how we might go about that. These are items that we're trying to get a discussion going. We hear unsolicited comments that come to us, and they frequently are to the nature, what I want is, and the other that we see is something more like, I'm concerned about what another person is doing. So we do get these unsolicited comments back, and we try to weigh those to also incorporate our recommendation. We also want to look at unbiased surveys. We will still collect information from people who are very highly involved, passionate about the system, but if we collect the information in an unbiased manner, we're able to weigh that input or their sentiment along with the sentiment of others. Our recommendation is to go through a process where we will have open public meetings. We will continue to meet at the commission meetings. We will also have 5 open public meetings, and we're looking at Garden City, Beloit, Hutchinson, Lawrence, and Fredonia as a distribution across the state. In addition to that, we will conduct surveys on these issues through our landowner deer survey, and just this week, I talked with the Department of Ag Statistics up at Topeka. We're trying to make an arrangement to conduct that survey. And we're also incorporating these types of questions into our deer hunter report card system. So we will get representative information back from the hunters. Those are the items that we have. The reason we're here is to gain input, direction from the commission, and input from the public. Are there any questions or comments?
Are there any questions, comments for Lloyd from the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Lloyd, on a lot of these suggested topics, and I'm not sure they're even recommendations, I get a lot of feedback, sometimes on both sides of the issue. Mm-hmm. The one thing that there seems, at least from the feedback I'm getting, on changing the traditional 12-day firearm season to before Thanksgiving, I really get a visceral negative response from nearly everybody. And I think this is one that probably will stir up more ill will than we may want to try to deal with. And so I think it can be thrown out there, and I could be wrong. Public opinion might change, but I think that is one that there doesn't seem to be much volume in support or decibels in support of it for what it's worth.
Other comments, questions for Lloyd from the commission? Lloyd, I'd like to say again, I believe I said this in Wichita, that during my 8 years, we've discussed time and time again how we persuade hunters to shoot does. It's not been a very successful effort in the methods we've used to try to accomplish that goal. For that reason, I think the idea of giving rifle hunters a 2-day pre-rut season on antlerless deer early in the fall would be something worth trying. I think other states do use it with some success, and the opportunity for a rifle hunter to be able to go deer hunting before, after Thanksgiving would be attractive. And I support that idea. Other comments, questions from the commission? Comments, questions from the public? Mr. Pierce?
Yeah, Lloyd, I have a question. If we went with the youth season before Labor Day, that would sometimes be in August. And I see a lot of fawns with spots at that time of year. If their doe was harvested, what would their chances be of survival?
Good question, Mike. The research that has been done, and I can send you a copy of it that you might like, the fawns should be, the majority of the fawns will be weaned at that time. They have had examples where the female is lost, where the doe is lost, and the survival of these fawns is very high. It's as good as when the doe is with them, nearly as good. I can send you a copy of that.
Just what you've said is fine. I was just wondering. And does anybody know, do kids get out for Columbus Day? I mean, I think you state people get off for every holiday in the world, but do many schools let off for Columbus Day?
I think so.
No, I don't think nearly as much. They don't in Topeka.
Okay. Lloyd,
I did check a couple of them, Mike. I went on and I went to some websites. Some schools do and some schools do not. The point is, it is a holiday and a potential that some may be able to take advantage of. It won't be less of an opportunity than they had before, because it will be the double weekend and the possibility, you'll have the Friday and the possibility of a holiday if it's observed in that school system.
Okay, I'd like to make a couple other requests that you won't be able to honor now, but I'm sure you can email me. I'd like to know, on average, the number of bucks that are bow killed after the end of gun season. Well, no, excuse me. Let's go ahead and go the weekend before Christmas until the end of the year. The number of bucks that are bow killed. So if we have the January, or excuse me, the doe season then.
Okay.
And
you want to take a look at antler deer, and we have done this before. I can try to do it again for this case, is I will try to put the estimated date, that would be good for the commission as well.
Okay.
When antler deer are taken. The harvest drops off dramatically after the firearm deer season.
Just
we have
whenever,
another
I'd like to have it.
right at the very end, the last weekend, and then we have when the antlerless only season comes on, we have a good harvest, a spike in the harvest right there. But those are not antler deer, and you're asking specifically how many of the antler deer would be lost.
But not fawns. Mm-hmm. And be mule deer and whitetail both. And also the number of does that are shot during the muzzleloader season.
Okay.
If you could
yeah.
provide that for me too, and the number of hunters that take advantage of the muzzleloader season. So, thank you.
You'll have to come up to the office and run through the data yourself.
Not if you put it in the computer.
All right.
Other comments, questions from the public?
Good evening and welcome to Norton, Kansas, folks.
Good
I would
evening.
like to have the board take under consideration two things. When does the non-residents apply for, when is the deadline for non-residents to apply for deer? When is their deadline?
The application for
Yes.
non-residents
Yes.
is the month of April.
And when is
It's
the
normally the last day is the last Friday in April.
and when is the residents' deadline?
Where there is a drawing, it is the second Friday, it's either the first or the second, I think it's the second Friday in July.
My next question is why?
Okay, it's a good question. People coming from out of state have requested to have their application period early so that they can, the point that they were making was they had to put in for vacation time, and they didn't want to put in for vacation time if they didn't know they had a permit. They wanted to move it earlier, the application earlier rather than later.
Thank you. I would like to make a recommendation or take into consideration. The state of Nebraska, which is right north of us, has 3 drawings. First is for a resident that did not have a tag last year. The second drawing is for a resident who did have a tag last year. And the third drawing is for non-residents like us in Kansas to put in for what's left over. To me, that makes a lot of sense. Take care of your residents first and leave the out-of-staters second. And one more thing I'd like to take in consideration is to consider the whole month of December being a firearms deer season. Let's get rid of some of these deer, folks. If you look in the Norton paper, and I don't have exact figures, but since the 1st of January, we had at least 80 accidents in Norton County involving deer. Thank you, and thanks for coming.
Your name, sir?
Pete the Poacher. No, I'm sorry, Dr. Peterson, kid.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the public on this agenda item?
Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. Next item, C9, ANS bait regulations, Doug Nygren.